Welcome to your source for market research news for the pharmaceutical, healthcare, life sciences, and medical device industries. This is Pharma Research VIDEO Report. We're here with market research news from these fields that we bet you have not heard. The Tufts Center for the Study of Drug Development is reporting drug manufacturers are proceeding cautiously in their use of social media, although it can supposedly contribute to improvements in clinical research. Tufts says nearly all drug sponsors have corporate policies for their use of social media. However, most pharmaceutical companies do not have a comprehensive, coordinated process that works across their enterprise. Faster adoption of social media, Tufts says, is being restrained by an absence of regulatory guidance from FDA, plus concerns about social media's impact on research integrity. Social media's clinical use is right now primarily focused on information distribution and some patient interaction, including recruitment. The aforementioned concerns include patient privacy and confidentiality, plus research integrity and influencing study volunteer receptivity. Next, Prosper Insights and Analytics has released its healthcare coverage vital signs matrix. I found it to be a fascinating special analysis of over 15,000 consumers that compares individuals' health diseases and conditions with their healthcare coverage. We hope to review with Prosper executives some results from this matrix and to find out, as the research business states, how it might be deployed in predictive models to help insurance companies, pharmacies, government, and retailers. Moving on, we met Research EVP and Manager of Advanced Analytics Randy Wahl a few weeks ago, and he described to me the all-too-common research tendency in working with pharmaceutical companies to overstate the adoption of new drugs. We asked him to come here, explain why and how regularly that's happening, and to discuss potential solutions.
Well, I think in general, if you get them to focus on something like a new product, and I get them to focus on collateral, so detail aids, statements of benefits, indications, any kind of marketing materials or journal ads, those kind of things, tends to push up their interest and their knowledge in it as well. And just the fact of having them focus on that will tend to create overstatement. And you see that across, pretty much every category we work in, sometimes to a greater, sometimes to a lesser extent. In pharma, if I'm looking at overstatement in that intent, and usually it's intent to prescribe to their audience or their patient base. In general, across all the categories, we see about 40% overstatement between that and actual behavior, but also a huge variation in that relative to the category, the number of drugs in those. So that can range anywhere from as little as 18 to 20% overstatement, all the way up to more than 70%. So, 50% of the doctors say they're going to do it, and then in the end, only 20, 25% of them do it.
From a historical perspective, how close do you tend to get, and how often, how frequently can you get that close?
Ideally, you'd like to get something, and we try to set a validation range of being within plus or minus 20% of actual scripts when they go into the marketplace. And that's usually looking at a year to 2 years out. So usually an initial ramp up and trying to identify a peak demand. And historically, when we have the opportunity to validate on those, you're within range about 90% of the time. And then as the marketplace changes, so as new drugs come out that work differently and completely change treatment regimens, you have disconnects with that previous market. So what we like to do is look at an internal consistency among physicians, so we can identify within that, based on if you think about the call to action at the top of the funnel, and then different key decision criteria that we identify for in this case, healthcare providers. When they're going through that decision, what are they trying to address to get to that decision? And try to take that overstatement out in the current study, in the current context and current market environment. So basically looking at a convergent model where I'm asking each individual to pass or fail on that system. And that lets us look at, who my true adopter audience is, and identify doctors individually in that set by type, be able to look at them by adopter versus non-adopter. There's a lot of things you can do for profiling and that kind of stuff with that.
So
kind of model.
if after a 6-month period or so, the numbers don't seem to be adding up,
Right.
what was projected and what's actually happening, what's the option?
We're starting to have more clients come to us or approach or talk to them about, I guess, what we're calling non-writer studies, where they've entered the market with an assumption of how big this will be, either based on analog or some research they've done, and they're not achieving those levels. So really trying to pull apart using some components of adoption modeling and diffusion modeling to understand not the first side of it, which is how big do I think the adoption group might be, versus looking on the other side of looking at the people that aren't adopting. Where are they and how far are they from being adopters of this new drug? So trying to get, looking at the non-writer doctors and saying, it came out of this, I expected to get 40% of them. I only have 20%. Where are the rest of the doctors? And really building out a continuum of, are they near adopters? Are they indifferents? Are they rejectors? And getting kind of a distance from being a writer, and then identifying within those audiences, what are the things we have to address? Is it the fact that they're very dissimilar from our adopters? Are we not addressing their patient needs? So with the right kind of talking points about efficacy or meeting different patient type needs, or is it something completely different? Traditionally, you're looking at that adoption, usually pharma's a little longer, like a 2-year period or so. With diffusion, you're trying to lay out that entire continuum of adoption all the way through rejection or long-term adopters, who are people that basically, when I'm talking to them in the current time frame about a new drug, what it's going to provide, the benefits it has, those things, are really not seeing anything about it that they want. And so over time, if you have efficient adoption and these products become kind of the dominant design or the main thing, those people will come in. But I think the pace of adoption is such that we want our success earlier and faster. The demands for, if it's a better regimen or has better outcomes for patients or better indication for patients, you want to get that adoption and get that population healthier quicker, versus then letting it take that natural course of, okay, the long-term adoption on this over 10 years, you could meet that. Really, how could we do that in 5 years? How could we do it in 4 years? How could we move that up?
Our thanks to Randy and to Mark Research. If you'd like to contact him, his email is randy.wahl@markresearch.com. Finally, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services proposal to alter Medicare Part D, which we talked about a few weeks ago here, has been withdrawn. CMS Administrator Marilyn Tavenner explained, quote, "Given the complexities of these issues and stakeholder input, we do not plan to finalize these proposals at this time," end of quote. That input she's talking about happened 2 weeks ago when more than 370 protesting organizations representing insurers, drug makers, pharmacies, health providers, and patients protested in Washington to CMS directly. That's this week's Pharma Research VIDEO Report. If you'd like to sponsor us, we'd like to hear from you, and you can email info@rflonline.com. In the meantime, we'll see you next week with our next edition. And if you have any thoughts about our video reports, please email them directly to me, rflbob@gmail.com.